Echoes of catastrophe when the lens captured history's breaking points. It is a profound responsibility and indeed a privilege to guide you through these extraordinary and often sobering moments. We humans are a species driven by an insatiable curiosity, a desire to build, to explore, to push the very boundaries of what is possible. Yet in this relentless pursuit, we sometimes encounter the raw, unyielding forces of nature, or the hidden flaws within our own creations. The stories we are about to witness are not merely records of failure. They are, in their own tragic way, testaments to the complex interplay between ambition, understanding, and the often unpredictable world around us. Please subscribe to my channel and share this video with others. Throughout history, there have been moments when the unthinkable happened, when human innovation met tragic oversight, or when the forces of nature struck with unimaginable power. In these rare but unforgettable events, cameras were rolling, capturing destruction in real time. These aren't just accidents, they're pivotal moments in history, frozen in time by the lens. From engineering disasters to devastating explosions, here are 10 catastrophic failures caught on camera that shocked the world and changed it forever. The images you will see are powerful, sometimes disturbing, but they carry with them invaluable lessons etched into the fabric of our collective memory. We embark on this journey not to dwell on destruction, but to understand, to learn, and perhaps to foster a deeper respect for the delicate balance that governs our existence. Each event, captured with such stark clarity, offers a window into the critical junctures where human endeavor met its match, or where the systems we so carefully constructed revealed their unforeseen vulnerabilities. These are tales of immense power, of human fallibility, and ultimately, of the enduring quest for knowledge and resilience in the face of adversity. Join me as we explore these epic disasters. The Ballad of Galloping Gertie, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge collapse. Our first account takes us to the state of Washington in the United States, to the year 1940. Here, a marvel of modern engineering, the Tacoma Narrows Bridge stretched elegantly across the Puget Sound. It was at the time the third longest suspension bridge in the world, a symbol of progress and human ambition. Yet, this slender ribbon of steel and concrete harbored a secret, a fatal flaw in its aerodynamic design that would soon reveal itself in the most dramatic fashion. Even before its official opening, construction workers had noted its unusual tendency to move vertically in windy conditions, earning it the rather ominous nickname Galloping Gertie. The engineers, though aware of the bridge's peculiar oscillations, believed it to be structurally sound. They had, after all, employed the prevailing theories of bridge construction. However, the design was remarkably light and slender, making it exceptionally vulnerable to the forces of wind in a way that was not fully appreciated at the time. The solid girders used in its construction, instead of allowing wind to pass through, acted like an aerofoil, creating lift and drag that induced the bridge to sway and ripple. This was not a matter of brute force overwhelming the structure, but a more subtle, insidious interaction known as aeroelastic flutter. On the fateful morning of November 7, 1940, just 4 months after its grand opening, the winds picked up, gusting through the Narrows at around 40 miles per hour. The bridge began its now infamous dance. What started as moderate undulations soon escalated into violent torsional twisting. The main span writhed like a colossal serpent, the road deck tilting at angles of up to 45 degrees, rising and falling in breathtaking, terrifying waves. Cameras, fortuitously present, captured this surreal spectacle, a structure designed for rigidity, behaving like a fluid, dynamic entity. The sole car on the bridge at the time belonged to a local reporter, Leonard Coatsworth, who had to abandon his vehicle and crawl to safety, his cocker spaniel Tubby tragically remaining trapped. For hours, the bridge contorted, its steel groaning under the immense rhythmic stress. Engineers and onlookers watched, helpless, as the oscillations intensified, suspension cables snapping with sharp reports, sending showers of sparks into the air. The elegant structure was, quite literally, tearing itself apart before their very eyes. A slow-motion catastrophe unfolding against the grey November sky. Finally, with a deafening roar, a 600-foot section of the main span broke free and plunged into the churning waters below. The remaining sections soon followed, leaving behind a scene of twisted metal and shattered concrete. Miraculously, there were no human fatalities directly from the collapse itself. The legacy of Galloping Gertie, however, was profound. The dramatic footage became essential viewing for engineering students worldwide, a stark, undeniable demonstration of aerodynamic forces. It revolutionized bridge design, ushering in an era of wind tunnel testing and a deeper understanding of aeroelasticity, ensuring that such a spectacle would hopefully never be repeated. a pillar of fire, the Challenger space shuttle explosion. We now turn our gaze skywards to a moment that promised triumph but delivered unspeakable tragedy. It was January 28th, 1986, a crisp morning at Cape Canaveral, Florida. The Space Shuttle Challenger stood poised on the launch pad, ready to carry 7 brave astronauts into orbit. Among them was Krista McAuliffe, a high school teacher selected for the Teacher in Space program, her presence symbolizing a new era of civilian participation in the wonders of space exploration. Millions, including countless schoolchildren, watched live, their anticipation palpable. The countdown reached 0, and with a thunderous roar, Challenger's mighty engines ignited, thrusting the shuttle towards the heavens. For the first minute, the ascent appeared flawless, a familiar spectacle of controlled power. But within the intricate machinery of the solid rocket boosters, a critical failure was unfolding. A small rubber seal, known as an O-ring, designed to prevent hot gases from escaping a joint in the booster, had become brittle in the unusually cold pre-launch temperatures. This vulnerability had in fact been a known concern among some engineers. Just 73 seconds into the flight, at an altitude of nearly 9 miles, a plume of flame became visible, erupting from the side of the right solid rocket booster. This was the compromised O-ring, failing catastrophically. The searing hot gases burned through the external fuel tank, which housed hundreds of thousands of gallons of liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. In an instant, the external tank ruptured, and the Challenger was engulfed in a massive, terrifying fireball. The shuttle itself, subjected to overwhelming aerodynamic forces, broke apart. On television screens across the globe, the image of Challenger disappearing into that chaotic cloud of smoke and debris was seared into the collective consciousness. The iconic Y-shaped plume against the clear blue sky became a symbol of national grief and a stark reminder of the inherent dangers of spaceflight. The voices of the mission controllers, moments before filled with professional calm, became tinged with disbelief and then dawning horror. The nation, and indeed the world, watched in stunned silence as the dream of that mission disintegrated in mid-air. The aftermath was a period of intense scrutiny and soul-searching for NASA. The Rogers Commission, appointed to investigate the disaster, meticulously pieced together the chain of events, revealing a flawed decision-making process that had downplayed the risks associated with the O-rings, particularly in cold weather. The Challenger disaster led to a nearly 3-year hiatus in the shuttle program, extensive redesigns of the solid rocket boosters, and significant changes in NASA's safety protocols and management structure. It stands as a tragic lesson on the perils of hubris and the critical importance of heeding engineering warnings, especially when human lives hang in the balance. A dance of death, the Hyatt Regency Walkway collapse. Our journey now takes us to Kansas City, Missouri, to the Hyatt Regency Hotel on July 17, 1981. The hotel's atrium, a vast open space, was alive with the sounds of music and laughter. A popular weekly tea dance was in full swing, with hundreds of guests gathered on the lobby floor and on the innovative suspended walkways that crisscrossed the expansive area above. These walkways, on the 2nd and 4th floors, were a striking architectural feature, offering panoramic views of the bustling scene below. They seemed to float, symbols of modern design. As the evening progressed and more people congregated on these aerial pathways, an unseen structural flaw was reaching its breaking point. The original design for the walkways involved single hanger rods that would run from the ceiling through the 4th floor walkway and down to support the 2nd floor walkway directly beneath it. However, during construction, a crucial and ultimately fatal change was made to this design. The single rod system was altered to a double rod system, where one set of rods supported the 4th floor walkway from the ceiling and a separate set connected the 2nd floor walkway to the 4th floor walkway. This seemingly minor alteration had catastrophic consequences. It effectively doubled the load on the connections supporting the 4th floor walkway, specifically on the box beam hanger rod connections. The nuts supporting the cross beams were now bearing the weight of both walkways, a stress they were never intended to withstand. The design change made to simplify assembly inadvertently created a critical point of failure. On that festive night, as dancers swayed below, the immense strain proved too much. Suddenly, with a sound described by survivors as a deafening crack or a series of rifle shots, the 4th floor walkway began to give way. It buckled and then plummeted downwards, crashing directly onto the 2nd floor walkway beneath it. The combined weight of both massive steel and concrete structures, along with the unfortunate souls upon them, then fell onto the crowded lobby floor. The joyous atmosphere was instantly transformed into a scene of unimaginable horror and chaos. Dust filled the air, screams replaced music, and the atrium became a mangled wreck of twisted metal and shattered lives. The collapse resulted in 114 fatalities and left over 200 people injured, making it one of the deadliest structural failures in the history of the United States at that time. Rescue efforts were immense and harrowing as emergency services worked tirelessly amidst the debris. The subsequent investigation laid bare the design flaw and the communication breakdown that allowed it to occur. The tragedy led to significant reforms in engineering ethics and practices, emphasizing the profound responsibility of engineers for public safety and the necessity of rigorous peer review for structural designs. The Hyatt Regency collapse remains a chilling example of how a seemingly small change, unscrutinized, can lead to disaster on a monumental scale. Chapter 4: The Invisible Fire, the Chernobyl Nuclear Disaster. We journey now to the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, to the early hours of April 26, 1986. Here, at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, a late-night safety test was underway in reactor number 4. This test, ironically designed to assess the reactor's ability to cope with a power failure, was plagued by delays and conducted with a series of critical safety violations. The operators, under pressure and perhaps not fully comprehending the volatile nature of the RBMK-type reactor at low power levels, were about to unleash an invisible enemy upon the world. The reactor design itself, common in the Soviet Union at the time, had known instabilities, particularly when operating at low power. During the poorly managed test, a sudden power surge occurred. The attempt to shut down the reactor by inserting control rods was too slow. A design flaw in these rods actually caused a momentary increase in reactivity at the bottom of the core. This, combined with the existing unstable conditions, led to a catastrophic chain reaction. Within seconds, 2 massive explosions ripped through the reactor building. The first explosion was a steam explosion caused by the intense heat vaporizing cooling water. This was followed shortly by a second, more powerful blast, likely a hydrogen explosion, as superheated steam reacted with zirconium fuel cladding. This second explosion blew the 2,000-ton lid clean off the reactor core, ejecting a colossal plume of radioactive isotopes, graphite, and debris high into the atmosphere. The night sky above Pripyat, the nearby city built for plant workers, was lit by an eerie, beautiful yet terrifying glow emanating from the exposed, burning reactor core. Firefighters, unaware of the lethal levels of radiation, were dispatched to battle the blaze. They courageously fought the fires on the roof of the turbine hall and around the reactor building, many receiving fatal doses of radiation in the process. Grainy surveillance footage and photographs from the time capture the chaotic, almost surreal scene. The glowing inferno, the shattered remnants of the reactor, and the desperate, futile efforts to contain a disaster whose true scale was not yet understood, or at least not publicly acknowledged by Soviet authorities. The Chernobyl disaster released hundreds of times more radioactive material than the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Radioactive clouds drifted across much of Europe, contaminating land, water, and food supplies. The immediate area around the plant became an exclusion zone, forcing the evacuation of hundreds of thousands of people. The long-term consequences, cancers, birth defects, and environmental damage continue to affect populations in Ukraine, Belarus, and Russia. Chernobyl stands as the most severe nuclear accident in history, a profound warning about the immense power we wield with nuclear technology and the catastrophic price of design flaws, operational errors, and a culture of secrecy. Chapter 5: The Beirut port explosion, a city shattered. Our focus now shifts to a more recent catastrophe, one that shook the world with its sudden, devastating force. On August 4, 2020, the vibrant city of Beirut, Lebanon, experienced an explosion of almost unimaginable magnitude. In the late afternoon, a fire broke out in a warehouse at the city's port. This warehouse, as would later be tragically revealed, contained approximately 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate, a highly explosive chemical compound, which had been unsafely stored there for over 6 years despite repeated warnings from officials. As firefighters battled the initial blaze, sending plumes of thick smoke into the sky, few could have predicted the horror that was about to unfold. The event was captured from countless angles, by citizens on their balconies with mobile phones, by CCTV cameras, and by dashcams in vehicles navigating the city streets. This proliferation of recording devices provided a chilling, multi-perspective chronicle of the disaster. The initial fire crackled and popped, a prelude to something far more sinister. Then, in an instant, the warehouse erupted. A colossal fireball shot upwards, followed by a rapidly expanding hemispherical shockwave of compressed air that rippled outwards through the city at supersonic speed. This was accompanied by a mushroom cloud, eerily reminiscent of a nuclear detonation, though this was purely a chemical explosion. The sheer power of the blast was breathtaking. Buildings miles away had their windows shattered. Structures closer to the port were flattened, reduced to rubble in seconds. The sound, a deafening roar, was heard as far away as Cyprus, over 150 miles across the Mediterranean Sea. The immediate aftermath was a scene of apocalyptic devastation. A massive crater was gouged out at the site of the warehouse. The port itself was obliterated. Surrounding neighborhoods, densely populated residential and commercial areas were laid to waste. Over 200 people lost their lives, more than 7,000 were injured, and an estimated 300,000 people were left homeless. The footage is visceral. The blinding flash, the shockwave tearing through buildings, the rain of debris, and the ensuing chaos and cries of the injured. The Beirut port explosion was not a natural disaster, nor an unforeseeable accident. It was a catastrophic failure of governance, a stark indictment of negligence, corruption, and mismanagement that allowed such a vast quantity of dangerous material to be stored with such reckless disregard for safety in the heart of a densely populated city. The event triggered widespread outrage among the Lebanese people who had already been grappling with a severe economic crisis. The world watched in horror and solidarity as the images of a shattered Beirut underscored the devastating human cost of systemic failure. Chapter 6. Oh, the Humanity. The Hindenburg Disaster. We travel back in time to May 6, 1937, to Lakehurst, New Jersey, a site that was to witness the dramatic end of an era in aviation. The LZ-129 Hindenburg, the largest rigid airship ever constructed and the pride of Nazi Germany's Zeppelin fleet, was attempting to moor after a transatlantic voyage. These colossal airships, filled with hydrogen, represented the luxurious pinnacle of long-distance air travel, floating palaces in the sky. For many, they were the very future of flight. As the Hindenburg maneuvered towards its mooring mast in front of a crowd of spectators and newsreel cameras, disaster struck with terrifying speed. The exact cause of ignition remains a subject of debate among experts. Theories range from a static electricity discharge igniting a hydrogen leak to engine sparks or even sabotage, though the former is most widely accepted. What is undisputed is that the highly flammable hydrogen gas, which gave the airship its lift, found a source of ignition. In a mere 34 seconds, the majestic airship was transformed into a raging inferno. Flames erupted near the tail section and rapidly consumed the fabric envelope, fueled by the vast quantity of hydrogen within its gas cells. The structure, once a symbol of grace and technological prowess, buckled and twisted as it was engulfed. Black and white newsreel footage captured the horrifying spectacle. The airship, silhouetted against the evening sky, suddenly wreathed in fire, then slowly, inexorably crashing to the ground in a burning heap. The disaster was immortalized not only by the dramatic film footage, but also by the emotional, live radio broadcast of Herbert Morrison, a journalist covering the arrival. His anguished cry, "Oh, the humanity," as he witnessed the unfolding tragedy, became an iconic piece of broadcast history, conveying the shock and horror of the moment to listeners across America. 36 people, passengers, crew members, and one ground crewman perished in the fire. Miraculously, 62 of the 97 people on board survived, some by leaping from the burning craft as it neared the ground. The Hindenburg disaster, captured so vividly on film and broadcast so emotionally on radio, had a profound and immediate impact on public perception. Confidence in hydrogen-filled airships plummeted overnight, while helium, an inert gas, was a safer alternative. The United States, which had a monopoly on helium at the time, had an export ban in place, particularly for Nazi Germany. The fiery end of the Hindenburg effectively marked the demise of the rigid airship as a viable mode of commercial passenger transport, paving the way for the ascendancy of heavier-than-air aircraft. It remains one of the earliest and most powerful examples of how mass media can shape public reaction to a catastrophic event. Chapter 7. The Black Tide, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. Our attention now turns to the Gulf of Mexico, to an environmental catastrophe that unfolded over months, its devastating impact captured by cameras both above and below the ocean's surface. On April 20th, 2010, the Deepwater Horizon, an ultra-deepwater, semi-submersible offshore drilling rig owned by Transocean and leased to BP, experienced a catastrophic blowout. A surge of natural gas blasted through the concrete core of the Macondo well, leading to a series of explosions and a ferocious fire that engulfed the rig. 11 workers tragically lost their lives in the initial explosions and inferno. The massive rig, burning intensely for over a day, eventually capsized and sank into the depths of the Gulf, some 5,000 feet below the surface. But this was only the beginning of the disaster. The sinking of the rig damaged the riser pipe connecting the wellhead on the ocean floor to the rig, and crude oil began gushing uncontrollably into the pristine waters of the Gulf. This was the start of what would become the largest marine oil spill in the history of the petroleum industry. For 87 agonizing days, oil spewed from the damaged wellhead. Remote-operated underwater vehicles equipped with cameras provided the world with haunting live images of the ruptured pipe, a seemingly endless torrent of black oil billowing into the dark ocean depths. These images became a symbol of corporate failure and environmental devastation. Above the surface, the oil slick grew relentlessly, spreading across thousands of square miles, a toxic sheen that threatened marine ecosystems, coastal wetlands, and the livelihoods of communities reliant on the Gulf's bounty. Efforts to cap the well were fraught with immense technical challenges due to the extreme depth and pressure. Various methods were attempted: containment domes, top-kill procedures, many of which failed, prolonging the crisis and deepening public frustration. Meanwhile, images of oil-soaked birds, dead dolphins and turtles, and tar balls washing up on once pristine beaches in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida painted a grim picture of the ecological toll. The spill impacted fisheries, tourism, and the delicate balance of the Gulf's unique marine environment. The Deepwater Horizon disaster was a stark wake-up call. It exposed critical flaws in safety protocols, drilling technology, and emergency response capabilities within the offshore oil industry. The spill resulted in billions of dollars in cleanup costs, fines, and compensation for BP. More profoundly, it ignited a global debate about the risks associated with deep water drilling, our reliance on fossil fuels, and the profound responsibility corporations have to protect the environment. The indelible images of that relentless underwater gusher serve as a potent reminder of the hidden costs of our energy consumption. Chapter 8: The Unthinkable Collapse. Surfside Condominium, Miami. We move now to a tragedy that struck with shocking suddenness in the quiet early morning hours. On June 24, 2021, in the coastal town of Surfside, Florida, a significant portion of the Champlain Towers South, a 12-story beachfront condominium inexplicably collapsed. Residents were asleep in their beds, unaware of the impending catastrophe. The event, captured by nearby surveillance cameras, showed the building seeming to pancake downwards, one section after another, into a pile of rubble in a matter of seconds. The footage is chilling in its abruptness. There was no fire, no explosion, no apparent external trigger, just the terrifyingly swift structural failure of a building that had stood for 4 decades. The collapse sent a plume of dust and debris into the air, and the sound, described by witnesses, was like thunder. In those few terrifying moments, a community was devastated, and the lives of 98 people were tragically cut short, buried beneath the concrete and steel of their own homes. The immediate aftermath was a scene of chaos and disbelief. First responders rushed to the site, facing a mountain of unstable debris and the daunting task of searching for survivors. The rescue efforts were painstaking and perilous, continuing for weeks under the intense Florida sun, fueled by the desperate hope of finding anyone alive. Families and friends of the missing gathered nearby, enduring an agonizing wait for news, their grief playing out against the backdrop of this incomprehensible structural failure. Investigations into the cause of the collapse began almost immediately, focusing on the building's history, maintenance records, and structural integrity. Reports emerged suggesting that engineers had identified significant structural damage and concrete deterioration in the building years prior, including issues with the pool deck, waterproofing, and cracking in concrete columns and beams in the underground garage. Warnings about the need for extensive and costly repairs had apparently been issued, but the full scope of the work had not been completed. The Surfside condominium collapse sent shockwaves across Florida and indeed the United States, raising urgent questions about the safety of aging coastal infrastructure, particularly in environments susceptible to saltwater corrosion and hurricanes. It highlighted potential deficiencies in building inspection protocols, condominium association governance, and the often difficult process of funding major structural repairs in multi-owner residential buildings. The haunting images of the partial collapse and the subsequent demolition of the remaining structure serve as a grim reminder that the structures we inhabit require constant vigilance and care, and that the consequences of deferred maintenance or ignored warnings can be utterly devastating. Chapter 9: A Nation's Grief, the Sampoong Department Store Collapse. Our journey takes us to Seoul, South Korea on June 29, 1995. The The Sampung department store, a prominent five-story luxury shopping mall, was bustling with afternoon shoppers. It stood as a symbol of South Korea's rapid economic development, a place of commerce and leisure. Yet beneath its veneer of prosperity, fatal flaws were embedded within its very structure, a result of greed, corruption, and a shocking disregard for safety standards. The building's history was marred by questionable decisions from its inception. Originally designed as a residential apartment block, it was illegally repurposed into a department store during construction. This change involved removing several crucial support columns to create more open retail space, particularly for escalators. Furthermore, a fifth floor was added, also an illegal modification, which significantly increased the load on the already compromised structure. Poor quality concrete and inadequately sized reinforcing bars further weakened the building. In the months and even years leading up to the collapse, ominous warning signs were present. Cracks appeared in the ceilings and floors, particularly on the upper levels. Employees and even some customers reported feeling vibrations. On the very morning of the disaster, significant cracks were observed around a supporting column on the fifth floor, and the roof began to sink. Store executives, however, made the fateful decision not to close the store or evacuate, reportedly fearing a loss of revenue. They merely shut off the air conditioning on the upper floors and instructed tenants to move merchandise. Then, at approximately 5:52 p.m., with hundreds of shoppers and employees still inside, the unthinkable happened. The roof of the fifth floor gave way. This triggered a catastrophic progressive collapse, with each floor pancaking down onto the one below it. Security camera footage from inside the store, though grainy, captured the terrifying final moments, the ceiling crumbling, shoppers running in panic, and then darkness. The entire south wing of the massive department store disintegrated into a pile of rubble and dust in less than 20 seconds. The Sampung department store collapse was South Korea's deadliest peacetime disaster, claiming 502 lives and injuring nearly 1,500 others. The rescue operation was immense, lasting for weeks, with moments of miraculous survival amidst the overwhelming tragedy. The disaster exposed deep-seated corruption within the construction industry and regulatory bodies. The subsequent investigation led to criminal convictions for the store's owner, his son, and several officials who had accepted bribes to approve the illegal design changes. The shock and grief that gripped the nation spurred sweeping reforms in building safety regulations and a renewed commitment to public safety, a hard-learned lesson from a catastrophe born of human avarice. Chapter 10. Nature's Fury, Humanity's Hubris. The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear disaster. Our final account brings us to the coast of Japan to March 11, 2011. On this day, a colossal undersea megathrust earthquake, the most powerful ever recorded in Japan's history, struck off the Tohoku coast. This magnitude 9.0 earthquake triggered an equally devastating series of tsunami waves, some reaching heights of up to 40 meters or 130 feet, as they inundated coastal areas. Among the many structures in the path of this incredible natural force was the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. The nuclear reactors at Fukushima Daiichi initially shut down automatically as designed when the earthquake tremors were detected. However, the earthquake also knocked out the external power supply needed to run the crucial cooling systems. The plant's emergency diesel generators kicked in to provide backup power, but then, approximately 50 minutes after the earthquake, the monster tsunami waves arrived, easily overtopping the plant's sea walls, which had been designed for much smaller waves. The floodwaters inundated the lower levels of the reactor buildings and turbine halls, critically disabling the emergency generators. With both external power and backup power lost, a situation known as a station blackout, the ability to cool the reactor cores and spent fuel pools was severely compromised. In the hours and days that followed, plant workers and engineers engaged in a desperate, heroic battle to prevent a complete meltdown. Despite their efforts, temperatures within 3 of the reactor cores soared, leading to the melting of nuclear fuel, damage to the reactor vessels, and the production of large quantities of hydrogen gas as superheated steam reacted with zirconium fuel cladding. This hydrogen gas accumulated within the reactor buildings, leading to a series of powerful explosions in Units 1, 3, and 4. These explosions, captured by news helicopters and other cameras, tore apart the outer structures of the buildings, releasing significant amounts of radioactive material into the atmosphere and a vast quantity into the Pacific Ocean. The world watched with growing alarm as Japan, a nation renowned for its technological prowess and preparedness, grappled with a nuclear crisis of immense proportions, second only in severity to Chernobyl. The Fukushima Daiichi disaster forced the evacuation of tens of thousands of residents from a wide exclusion zone around the plant. It led to a global re-evaluation of nuclear safety standards, particularly concerning the risks posed by extreme natural events and the adequacy of backup power and cooling systems. Drone footage later captured eerie images of the abandoned towns within the exclusion zone, frozen in time, a stark testament to the long-lasting consequences of the meltdowns. Fukushima was a tragic confluence of nature's overwhelming power and the vulnerabilities inherent in complex technological systems. A profound reminder that even the most advanced safeguards can be overcome. Wutro lessons forged in fire, ruin and resilience. As technology advances and we build ever taller, faster and more complex systems, the margin for error grows smaller. These disasters are not relics of the past, they are warnings for the present and future. Every blueprint, every bolt, every decision matters. Whether it's a bridge swaying in the wind or a nuclear plant facing the wrath of nature, the line between success and catastrophe is razor thin. The cameras that captured these failures didn't just show destruction. They exposed the invisible cracks in systems built by humans. They forced us to look closely, not just at the broken steel or shattered glass, but at the decisions and complacency that led us there. And yet, amid the rubble and smoke, these stories are also about human courage. First responders diving into danger, engineers working around the clock to stop the next failure, and survivors who rebuild from nothing, all of them are part of this narrative. Catastrophic failures test the limits of our systems, yes, but they also test the strength of our humanity. What we choose to learn from them defines what we build next. And with every video captured and every lesson carved in memory, we edge closer to a future that hopefully won't repeat the mistakes of the past. It is this capacity for learning, for adaptation, that truly defines our species, even in the face of such profound adversity. These 10 disasters were more than just moments of destruction. They were turning points in human history. Each one captured in real time revealed something about our vulnerabilities. The danger of ignoring warnings, the risks of pushing technology to its limits, and the devastating power of nature. But they also taught us resilience, sparked reform, and reminded the world that the price of negligence is often paid in lives. These images, etched into our collective memory, continue to haunt and teach us, because sometimes the most powerful warnings are the ones we watch unfold before our very eyes. May we always have the wisdom to heed them.